Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive.
Always exciting to be back.
And today we're going to tackle a concept that's, well, it's known for being a bit of a head-scratcher, dialectics. But,
It can be a bit daunting.
yeah, but we're not going to just throw the dictionary definition at you and call it a day. We're going straight to the source.
Right, to the thinkers who really grappled with it.
Exactly. Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels.
The dynamic duo of a lot of things, but especially when it comes to understanding how societies work and change.
And we've got a real treasure trove of material to work with here. We've got letters between Marx and Engels.
Which is always fascinating to peek into those personal correspondences.
Absolutely. And we've got excerpts from their major writings.
Yeah.
Oh, and even some biographical snippets.
To add that human dimension to these sometimes larger-than-life figures.
Right. So our mission, should we choose to accept it, which we do because we're already here, is to unpack how Marx and Engels actually interpreted and used this idea of dialectics.
Using their own words as much as possible to let them speak for themselves.
Well, I think what's going to be really interesting is to see how it's not just some abstract theoretical thing for them.
Not at all.
It's woven into how they analyze everything. Economics, politics, history, even nature.
They saw dialectics as a tool, a method for understanding the world around them.
A lens to view the world through, really.
And I think to kick things off, it might be helpful to hear how Engels himself defined dialectics.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. Lay it on us.
Okay, so in his Dialectics of Nature, Engels writes, and this is a quote, "Dialectics is nothing more than the science of the general laws of motion and development of nature, human society, and thought."
Okay, so right off the bat, we're talking about change, movement,
It's a very dynamic view.
not just like a snapshot of the world as it is.
Exactly. It's a process.
A process. Everything's in flux.
And that's where their interpretation of dialectics gets really interesting, especially when we compare it to earlier thinkers like Hegel.
Right, because Hegel was a big influence on them.
Yeah.
But they also had their critiques.
Oh, absolutely. They took Hegel's concept of dialectics and really grounded it in the material world.
So instead of just focusing on ideas, battling it out in some abstract realm,
Right.
they're looking at real-world conditions, economics, social relations, who's got power, who's struggling for resources.
That materialist approach is key for them.
And that's where their whole analysis of capitalism and class struggle really comes in.
Right. Because for Marx and Engels, dialectics isn't just about ideas. It's about real-world conflicts and contradictions.
Okay, I like where you're going with this. So like in a capitalist system, you've got the capitalists, the folks who own the means of production, the factories, the land, and you've got the workers.
Who have to sell their labor to survive.
Right, so there's like a built-in tension, a contradiction between those two groups.
And that's the engine of historical change for Marx and Engels.
Whoa, okay, so history is not just some smooth, upward trajectory.
It's a messy process, full of clashes and struggles.
Driven by these fundamental conflicts between different groups.
And dialectics is how they try to make sense of it all.
To analyze how those forces interact.
And how they lead to change.
So to really see how they put this into practice, let's look at how they apply dialectics to some specific issues.
Like economics.
Economics, perfect. Because I have a feeling that's where things get really interesting and maybe even a bit mind-bending.
It can definitely get complex,
No.
but they were brilliant at breaking down these complex ideas.
Okay, so walk us through it.
All right, so in a letter to Ludwig Kugelmann in 1868, Marx explains, and I'm quoting here, "The capitalist process of production, considered as a whole, or as a process of reproduction, produces not only commodities, not only surplus value, but it produces and reproduces the capitalist relation itself. On the one side, the capitalist, on the other, the wage laborer."
Okay, so it's not just about producing stuff, it's about, perpetuating the entire system.
Exactly. The power dynamic between those who own the means of production and those who labor.
Wow, it's like a self-perpetuating cycle built on this fundamental contradiction.
And this is where their concept of historical materialism really comes into play.
Right, because they're not just focused on economics in a vacuum, are they?
Not at all. They argued that the way a society produces and distributes goods, its economic base, shapes everything else. Its social, political, even intellectual life, what they called the superstructure.
So for them, economics wasn't just one aspect of society. It was like the bedrock.
The foundation upon which everything else is built.
And because that economic foundation, under capitalism, is based on this conflict between capitalists and workers.
They saw the potential for revolutionary change.
Okay, now I'm starting to see how this dialectical thinking provided them with this this framework for understanding how capitalism worked,
And how it might be challenged.
and ultimately how it might be transformed.
Because this wasn't just theoretical for them. They were deeply involved in the workers' movement.
They weren't just writing about it from some ivory tower. They were in the thick of it.
They believed that workers had the power to unite and overthrow the system.
And that, I imagine, made them pretty unpopular with the folks in charge.
Oh, absolutely. Their analysis was seen as dangerous. It pointed out the inherent instability of capitalism.
So they weren't just playing with ideas. Their use of dialectics had real-world consequences.
They were challenging the status quo. They offered a vision of a different kind of society, one based on cooperation rather than exploitation.
And that vision was deeply rooted in their understanding of these historical processes.
How these contradictions and conflicts actually drive change.
So to get a better grasp of how they saw these processes unfolding in their own time,
In the real world they were living in.
let's look at some of their writings about specific historical events.
Well, one event that really showcases their dialectical thinking in action is the 1871 Paris Commune.
Ah, yes, the Paris Commune. A pretty significant event for Marx and Engels, right?
Absolutely. They saw it as a real-world example of how those contradictions within capitalism, the ones we were just talking about, could actually erupt into revolutionary upheaval.
So for our listener who might not be totally up on their 19th century French history, can you give us a quick rundown of what the Paris Commune was all about?
Sure. So in 1871, after France was defeated in the Franco-Prussian War, the working class of Paris, they basically rose up and took control of the city. They established their own radical government and started implementing all sorts of socialist policies.
Wow, so they really, took their destiny into their own hands,
Yeah.
try to create a whole new kind of society.
Exactly. And Marx and Engels were just electrified by this.
They must have been thrilled to see their theories, playing out in the real world.
Oh, they were. In Marx's The Civil War in France, he called the Commune a glorious harbinger of a new society. He saw it as a concrete example of the proletariat, the working class, actually seizing power and trying to reshape society according to their own interests.
So they weren't just armchair revolutionaries.
Not at all. They were deeply invested in these real-world struggles.
And they saw the Commune as proof that their ideas about class struggle and the potential for revolution weren't just pie-in-the-sky theories.
Exactly. They had real-world potential.
Tragically, though, it didn't last very long, did it?
No, it didn't. The Commune was brutally crushed by the French government after just a couple of months.
What a blow that must have been.
It was. But even in its defeat, Marx and Engels, they really dug deep to try to extract some valuable lessons from it. They saw it as a learning experience, a glimpse into both the possibilities and the challenges of revolutionary change.
So they're using their dialectical thinking to analyze both the triumphs and the setbacks?
Absolutely. For instance, in a letter to Friedrich in 1874, Engels wrote, and this is a quote, "The Commune has proved that the working class cannot simply lay hold of the ready-made state machinery and wield it for its own purposes."
So they were constantly refining their understanding based on what they were seeing unfold in the real world.
Right. That's what's so cool about dialectics. It's not some rigid dogma.
It's adaptable.
It's a method of inquiry that keeps evolving as new information comes in.
It makes sense. It's about embracing the fact that the world is always in flux.
Yeah.
Right? Not trying to force fit everything into neat little boxes.
And speaking of evolving ideas, let's shift gears a bit and look at another fascinating example of how Marx and Engels use dialectics to understand social and historical change. And this is their analysis of pre-capitalist societies.
Okay, so we're delving into their historical materialism here, right? They weren't just laser-focused on capitalism. They were trying to understand how different economic systems throughout history have shaped society.
Exactly. And this is where their concept of modes of production comes in.
Modes of production.
Yeah.
Can you give us a refresher on what that term means?
Sure. Basically, a mode of production is just the way a society organizes its economic activity. It includes things like the tools and technology they use, how labor is divided up, and the relations of production.
The relations of production meaning who owns and controls the stuff used to produce things.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is how Marx and Engels applied dialectics to this whole concept.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
They argued that each mode of production, it has its own internal contradictions, like its own set of tensions, that eventually lead to its transformation into a whole new mode of production.
So it's that same idea of contradictions driving change, but now we're zooming out and looking at the grand sweep of history.
Precisely. For example, they argue that feudalism, that system that dominated Europe for centuries, well, it had within it the seeds of its own demise.
Okay, I'm curious to hear how they saw that playing out.
Well, under feudalism, you have this rigid social hierarchy with lords who own all the land and serfs who are tied to the land and work for the lords.
Right, it's a very top-down system.
But as trade and commerce start to develop over time, a new class emerges, the bourgeoisie.
And merchants and traders.
Right, and they start accumulating wealth and challenging the power of the feudal lords.
So you got this new economic force that's bumping up against the old order.
And that clash, that contradiction between the rising bourgeoisie and the old feudal aristocracy, it leads to massive social and political upheaval.
Revolutions, wars, new ideas bubbling up.
And ultimately, out of this turmoil, a new system emerges, capitalism.
But of course, as we've been discussing, they saw capitalism as having its own set of contradictions too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Between the capitalists and the workers. And those contradictions, in their view, would eventually lead to capitalism's own transformation.
So they saw history as this dynamic process of one mode of production giving rise to another, driven by these internal struggles and conflicts.
And they saw dialectics as the key to understanding this whole intricate process of historical change.
It's amazing, isn't it? They were basically putting together this giant puzzle using dialectics to see how all these pieces fit together and how the picture itself is constantly changing.
And they truly believed that by understanding these historical processes, we could gain insights into the present and even get a glimpse of what future transformations might hold.
This is blowing my mind. It's incredible how they wove together philosophy, economics, history, and even current events into this grand unified theory of social change. Really impressive.
And speaking of impressive, let's zoom in on a few more specific examples of how Marx and Engels actually applied dialectics to tackle particular issues.
Okay, so we've been tracing how Marx and Engels applied this idea of dialectics to economics and history. But did they ever, explicitly lay out what they meant by dialectics?
They did. Actually, there's a really interesting passage in Engels' Anti-Düring,
Okay.
where he kind of breaks down the core principles of dialectics, what he calls the three main laws.
Ooh, I love a good list. Lay it on us.
All right, so he writes, and I'm quoting here, the law of the transformation of quantity into quality and vice versa, the law of the interpenetration of opposites, the law of the negation of the negation.
Wow, okay, those are some real brain twisters right there.
I know, right? A bit jargony.
Yeah. But I think with a little unpacking, we can make sense of them.
Oh, definitely. So let's start with that first one, the transformation of quantity into quality. What Engels is getting at here is that gradual changes, they can build up over time and eventually lead to these sudden fundamental shifts.
So like little things adding up until, bam, something totally new emerges.
Yeah, exactly. Like think about heating up water. You gradually increase the temperature, but then at a certain point, boom, it transforms into steam.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
So small incremental changes can actually lead to these big qualitative leaps.
And that's a core idea in dialectical thinking.
Okay, that makes sense. What about that second law, the interpenetration of opposites? That one sounds, well, a bit mysterious.
It does, but it's actually pretty central to how Marx and Engels saw the world. They believe that things are defined by their opposites.
So like light and dark, up and down.
Exactly. Those concepts only make sense in relation to each other. You can't have one without the other.
So it's not just about things being different, it's about them being, fundamentally interconnected.
And even dependent on each other. Like you can't have a boss without workers or a capitalist without, people to buy their products.
So there's this built-in tension, this dynamic interplay between these opposing forces.
And that's what drives change. It's the engine of history.
Okay, on to that third law, the negation of the negation. This one sounds like we're getting into some seriously deep philosophical waters.
We are, but it's actually a really profound idea. It's basically saying that change, real change, is a process of development that builds upon itself.
So it's not just a simple back and forth like a pendulum swinging?
It's more like a spiral, always moving forward, but incorporating what came before.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get it.
Engels uses the example of a grain of barley to illustrate this. So the grain, it's negated, it dies, right?
Right.
But in that negation, it produces something new, a plant, a new form of life.
So it's not just about things being destroyed. It's about them being transformed into something new and more complex.
Exactly. There's this element of progress, of moving towards something different and arguably better.
Wow, they really saw this process at work everywhere, didn't they? History, economics, politics, nature.
Everywhere. It was a fundamental principle for them.
I'm beginning to see why they were so drawn to dialectics. It's a way to, make sense of these really complex processes.
To see the underlying patterns, the interconnectedness, the contradictions that are driving change.
And to understand that change isn't just some random, chaotic thing, but it's happening according to these laws, these principles.
Precisely.
So before we wrap up, I'm curious to hear a little more about the personal side of Marx and Engels. We've been talking a lot about their big ideas, but you mentioned we also have some biographical material.
We do.
Does that give us any insights into how they approached dialectics in their own lives?
It does. There's this really amusing anecdote from a letter that Jenny Marx, Karl Marx's wife, wrote to him in 1844.
Oh, Jenny. She sounds like quite a character.
Yeah. Oh, she was. Very sharp, very witty. So in this letter, she's teasing Karl about potential seductions he might be encountering in Paris.
Ooh la la.
Yeah.
Sounds a bit scandalous.
Right, and she says that she wants to get him à la hauteur de principe, which basically means up to speed on principles.
Huh. So even their personal lives were infused with these philosophical debates. It wasn't just an academic pursuit for them, it was a way of life.
It really was. And it shows that Jenny was no intellectual slouch herself. She was right there in the thick of these discussions.
It's a good reminder that behind these big ideas, there were real people with relationships and, sense of humor.
Exactly. It humanizes them.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Marx and Engels' dialectics, what would you say are the key takeaways for our listeners?
I think the biggest one is that for Marx and Engels, dialectics wasn't just some abstract philosophy.
It was a practical tool.
It was a way of understanding the world, a way to see how everything is connected, how contradictions and conflicts drive change.
And they saw those forces of change not as something to be afraid of, but as the potential for creating a better world.
A more just and equitable world.
It's a powerful way of looking at things.
It really is. And even if you don't agree with all of their conclusions, I think understanding their use of dialectics can really open your mind to new ways of seeing how the world works.
And how it can be changed.
Exactly. It's about asking questions, challenging assumptions, and understanding that everything is in flux.
And in a world that's changing as rapidly as ours is, those are some pretty valuable skills to have. So to our listeners, if your head is spinning a little bit right now, don't worry. These ideas take time to digest.
Yeah, give yourself some time to mull it over.
Hopefully, though, this deep dive has sparked your curiosity about dialectics.
And maybe inspired you to do a little further exploration on your own.
Because, as Marx and Engels famously said, the point isn't just to understand the world, but to change it. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. Until next time.
See you then.